Hi there, YouTube. I'm your shitty DM, and here's a serious question. Is killing goblins racist? No. No, it's not. Two major reasons. One, they're not real, and they exist to not feel bad about killing. Two, it's not racist unless somebody makes it racist. So yeah, goblins aren't real. Neither is anything else you're doing in an RPG because it's fantasy. You're in it because once a week you like to sit down, roll some dice with people, and pretend to be an elf. This is somewhat facetious, but that's essentially what it is. You've got this fantasy world, and after the 4 or so hours your game lasts, you get it from the table and go back to the real world. If you feel that killing goblins is something you can condition someone into being racist with, shouldn't you also be concerned about them raising the dead, turning into animals, and throwing fireballs? Again, this is somewhat facetious, but one of the hallmarks of someone who enjoys fantasy as a whole is that they're able to distance the real world from the fantasy world. In fact, there's that comfortable distance that allows you to make jokes and not take it entirely seriously. So what exactly are goblins for? Well, in the lecture series Swords, Ring, and Monsters, Exploring Fantasy Literature, Professor Michael D.C. Trout cites the 1872 book The Princess and the Goblin as being an early example of the modern-day goblin, a member of a massive evil horde that exists to pose a threat to the heroes that they can overcome without feeling bad about it because they're evil and aren't human and they're killing tens and dozens of them. Well, rather, demi-human. It's not exactly okay to just kill dwarves because they're not humans. So this is a thesis sort of rooted in Dungeons & Dragons. Now, the primary function of D&D is to be an escapist power of fantasy. That's the original intention. You can use it for other things like a despair simulator if you want, but that is the primary function of D&D that the game is planned around. Goblins pretty much exist to be your first baddies that you go up against because they're not too strong, not too weak, and don't have a whole lot of hit points. If your first encounters are going to be something that you'll feel bad about, then that's a problem. You'll feel demoralized, like you did something wrong, then you probably won't want to keep going. So the point of goblins is that you don't have to feel bad about killing them because they're a scrubby little bunch of creatures that no one likes because they're all evil little pillaging shits. The fact that they're evil is also a universal aspect. Goblins are supposed to be evil. These are the creatures where you can not only be sure, but depend on them being selfish assholes. Same goes for the majority of other creatures, whereas humans almost universally are neutral. Not just this race of humans are neutral and then these ones are evil and these ones are good. Pretty much all humans are neutral, besides PCs and various NPCs, because in real life, well, that's what we are. Going back to the primary focus of D&D, you're supposed to be playing as heroic figures fighting the forces of evil to make things good for everybody. That doesn't happen when you're engaged in a discussion about what's right and wrong with a race of sensible creatures. By the functions of the game, goblins have to be assholes. But then if you happen to find a goblin that's managed to break free of its own societal tendencies and is actually trying to be a good goblin, then by golly, it's your duty then to nurture like a seed into something beautiful. Otherwise, goblins are little green shits that run around and stab you. So let's talk about what you have to do to actually make it racist. Now, a lot of people are going to be using certain signifiers and aspects from the real world and imprinting them onto their fantasy races and settings. This means that there can be certain similarities between, say, tribal African culture and the cultures of orcs and goblins. It also doesn't help that fantasy can be used as a metaphor for the real world's various circumstances and issues. So when we experience it, we are conditioned to believe that these bad guys are like this real world thing, and because you're having the bad guys be like this real world thing, according to you, this real world thing is evil, and you're an asshole, and because of that, I quit. Also, if you graduated from college, you no doubt took some kind of English course where you were told to look for that when reading something, so then it really doesn't help. So not to point fingers, but it might just be you. That is not to demonize you or say there's something wrong with you and that you are the asshole, because you've been conditioned to think like that. But what's important is to not stop at the first part. You continue to think about it and come to a full conclusion. It's important to learn and to have context on a subject so you can talk about it and engage in it. You should continue to grow and master the game in your own way. And if you want the kind of game where Goblin Society is a major factor, then go ahead and do it. I'll admit I've always been more of a hero questing kind of guy, so I'm not really interested in it myself, but if it's your game and you get people interested in it, then go ahead. I'd like to hear about such a thing because as important as conventions and cliches can be, it's always neat to see what else people can do and, just like toss things up and see what make the original thing more important by having something different and varied on it. So thanks for listening. I'm hoping to do some more discussions and video essays from time to time. Kindly do as you please. Critique is always important for growing as a writer. Till next time, I'm your shitty DM, and goodbye.